How are everyone doing? Good? Awesome. So yeah, as Brendan introduced me, I am a senior product line manager at Vmware. I just transitioned into this role about a month ago. Before this, I was at BlueJeans network and I was the head of 2 product lines there. I spent about 5 years. When I joined the company, it was a startup. We were a little less than 100 people. Venture backed into video conferencing. Any of you guys heard about BlueJeans? Yeah? Cool. So yeah, I spent about 5 years there, saw the company grow from about 100 people to about 500 or 600 that it is now, and just felt that it was time that I try something different, something that was more exciting. So I decided to join VMware. And as Brendan mentioned, I am an instructor at product school. The upcoming cohort in July is going to be my second cohort. I taught one back in October, I believe, of last year. And it was a lot of fun. There was a good bunch of aspiring product managers. A couple of them have already landed a product manager role, either at the companies that they were working at, or they found a role that they were interested in. So just a little bit about my journey. So I started my career at Cisco. I was a technical support engineer. And the reason I like to bring this up is because I want to give confidence to you guys, right? A lot of you out here are not product managers today. A lot of you are aspiring product managers, or a lot of you are product managers but want to advance in your career. There are a lot of ways you can actually end up getting a product management role, right? It's either through courses, training, self-help books, or through real life journey, right? There's a lot of ways you can actually end up getting a product management role as long as you're really familiar with some of the key principles of product management, right? And that's what my session is going to really focus on what are some of those key principles, and also talk a little bit about product management as a function, right? When you end up being a product manager, what are some of the key business skills that you need to acquire over time? What are the key things that you need to really look at when you're doing your day-to-day job, and how you can really excel at product management? So those are some of the things I will cover. I want to keep this fairly interactive. So before I go any further, quick show of hands, how many of you are product managers already? Okay, awesome. So you and I can make this more interactive for the rest of the group here, right? So if you have anything to share, if you want to add on to anything that I've spoken about, please feel free to do that. Which company are you part of?
I'm with CL Technologies.
Okay, so it's a services-based company?
No, it's a product company. It's into information archival.
Okay, awesome, cool. Good, so yeah, we'll keep this interactive. Let me know if any questions. Again, this is my journey. Started at customer support, moved into technical marketing engineer, which really got me close to customers. That is one of the key skills that you really need to hone in on if you want to end up being in a product management position, is the ability to get to know your user, the ability to talk to customers, the ability to understand your user, and really empathize with your user. That is what is extremely critical when we talk about product management. Because when you understand your user, you can really extract and build a persona. And once you have the persona figured out, you know exactly what are some of the things that you can actually do in the product that will help achieve the business goals that you've outlined. So understanding users, having the ability to talk to customers, those are some of the very critical skills. I acquired those through being in a customer support role, right? So I was talking to customers day in and day out. I knew what are some of the challenges, some of the needs, some of the issues they were having. When I advanced into the technical marketing role, I had a greater chance to influence the business, because as TMEs, we used to funnel all the feedback, not just from support, but also from sales, pre-sales, and a bunch of other avenues back to product management. So that's what really got me into the customer first mindset, which helped me get to the product manager role at Cisco. I did that for about 6 months, wanted to try out a startup. So I joined BlueJeans network back then, advanced being a product manager to a product line manager to being a head of product 2 lines, and now I'm at VMware leading a machine learning and AI initiative for the company. So it's been an exciting journey, and I would love to share that with you guys, and I do that at Product School. It's a great training institute that will really help acquire some of the fundamental skills that you need to basically advance yourself in product management. So this slide, I like to project this because this is these are all the different business functions that you will be interfacing on a daily basis as a product manager, right? You're going to have customers front and center, but at the same time, you will be talking to sales, you will be talking to marketing, you will be talking to a lot of executives, you will be talking to customer support, you'll be talking to the design team, engineering team, which will be a bulk of your role, right? So the way I look at product management, and I have a really nice slide that depicts it, is you guys are the center of the universe. You guys are extremely critical to move the business forward. There are certain goals that the company has outlined. You guys support those goals, right? The go-to-market team, which is sales and marketing, will help support you, but you guys are building the products. You guys are building the features that users are actually going to use to help solve some of the problems and challenges they have. Whether you're at an enterprise company or whether you're at a consumer-based company, every user will have needs, every business will have needs, and it's your job as a product manager to figure out what is the most critical need that your users are having. The ones that you solve will help accelerate the business, right? Help your sales team sell the products, help the marketing team acquire leads, so on and so forth. So that's really why I had this slide up here. And as I said, you are the center of the universe. You will be talking to each one of these stakeholders, each of these business functions, each of these teams to really move forward from a product perspective, right? So let's go through these one by one. Customers, absolutely critical. Getting to know your user, getting to know your customers through user interviews, through surveys, through in-product feedback, bunch of different ways you can collect that feedback. But getting to know your users is extremely important. Understanding the pain points, challenges that they're having, empathizing with them. We're going to talk about design thinking a little bit in the session. Extremely critical framework that you should apply on a day-to-day basis to help you empathize with your user and your customers. The second critical business unit that you will be working with would be sales and marketing. Again, this will depend based on the stage of the company you're in, right? So if you're at a startup, a lot of these business units might be combined. If you're in a very large organization, a lot of them will be very isolated, right? But as a product manager, you will have to figure out what's the best way to navigate through these business units so that you can build relationships with them, and these guys can help support your product and help sell your product, right, to achieve business goals. Executive management is extremely critical, right? As a product manager, you have the vision. You have the vision to build what the product should look like. You know your customers the most. Executives don't really know that, right? They think they know that, but they probably don't because they're not at the grassroots level. You're the one talking to customers. So it's very important to funnel that feedback back to the executive team, right? And convince them that your vision is the right thing for the business. And a lot of times you will hypothesize on situations. You will hypothesize saying that if we do feature A, we will get X percentage of users, or we will get X percentage of revenue, right? That's the hypothesis. You back it up with data, you back it up with surveys, back it up with information that will help convince a lot of the executives. So there's a lot of detailed work needed to convince executives. Executive management is extremely critical, and that is again one of the things at product school we spend a lot of time on, especially in my cohort where we talk a lot about how do you actually do that, right? What is a strategy to convince executives and get the buy-in you need to invest in your product, to agree with the roadmap that you have established. The third function is the sales and marketing, right? These are your, I would say, right and left hands. Sales is going to go and sell your product, and marketing is going to pitch your product, is going to message your product, going to position your product in the market to make enough leads for the sales team to go and convert and go and chase after. So marketing, you will be spending a lot of time on making sure that they can articulate the value proposition that your product offers. Right? What is the value? What problem does your product solve for the user that you're targeting? A lot of it will fall into product marketing at a very large organization, but you have the ability to influence marketing. You have the ability to influence product marketing to make sure they can articulate the value of your product. Right? So the changes that happen on the website, the messaging, right? Who is the target customer that you're acquiring or going after? What does that persona look like? You have the ability to articulate and influence them to really make sure, because if your roadmap aligns to their vision and aligns to their go-to-market strategy, you have a winning combination. Things break when they have a separate go-to-market message, whereas your product roadmap does not reflect that. So working with marketing, working with sales is extremely critical. And then of course the fundamentals, right? Working with engineering, working with design, and working with a data science team. Those are again 3 critical components to a product management role. You define the requirements, you define the user stories, engineering understands those requirements, understand those user stories. They work with the design team to come up with a UX that basically works for the end user and the end customer, and you make sure that the requirements are correctly been implemented by the engineering team, right? So that basically goes hand in hand. Working with support, customer success. So for SaaS-based companies, customer success is a big thing. So again, these are excellent sources to collect feedback from customers. You cannot scale yourself if you go about talking to all your customers, right? That's just not possible. So the way you can scale is if you can funnel the feedback from your customer success team, from your customer support team, educating them on what are some of the questions that you need answers to, right? What is things that you want to ask your customers? Keeping a tab on that, keeping a tab on all these support cases, right? Customers are complaining, things are not working, what are the areas that they're, where it's not working? And you actually can influence your roadmap to address some of those needs that customers have. Okay? So these are, again, very high-level business functions that as a product manager you will be influencing. You will not be doing their work, right? You already have a shitload of things to do, right? But what you will be doing is you will be influencing them to help support what you want to get out of them, right? You need feedback, you influence success support teams, right? Make it easy for them to funnel feedback back to you. You want sales, build relationships with sales teams, right? Make sure they're well trained. Make sure marketing has given them enough collateral, training materials, so on and so forth. So they're really, really well positioned to go and sell your product. Right? So that's what your role as a product manager is. You will not be creating a whole lot of training videos, whole lot of collaterals. You will not be writing all of it. Marketing will be doing all that. But you have the opportunity to influence those teams. Any questions so far? Is this resonating with a lot of the things that you guys see day to day, or not really? How many of you guys are engineers in this room? Okay. Non-engineers? Got it. Okay, so design, data science, it's a fair mix. What's that?
E-commerce.
E-commerce, okay, cool. Product marketing, okay, so I think you can resonate with a lot of things that I said, right? Anything you would like to add to this? No? Okay, yes, question.
You said that product manager should know the customers and what they want. Is that marketing, product marketing, folks should know more about what customers want?
Yeah, that's...
Product manager are more internal to you?
Okay, great question. So the question was, I mentioned that as a product manager, you really need to know your customer and understand what your customers wants. What you asked was whether that's more of a function for a product marketing person versus a product manager, right? I would totally disagree to that. I think product marketing is an excellent vehicle to collect and get to the right customer and get to the right user. They might bring the information to you, but ultimately you are the one who's prioritizing the features based on the customer needs and based on the customer wants. So if you don't have a very good idea of what your customer wants, how would you prioritize feature A versus feature B, right? So as a product manager, you not only make sure that a particular feature is implemented, you also make sure which features engineers are working on. You determine the roadmap, you determine the priority. And for you to be able to determine the priority, you need to know exactly what customers are looking for. Product marketing can be used as an arm to collect information. They can understand the market, they can look at competitors. So a lot of times competitive analysis is done by product marketing teams, which is a great thing. But you as a product manager, you need to be very well aligned to the work they're doing and the analysis and studies they're producing. You can trust them that they're doing the right thing, but ultimately, as a product manager, you need to have the pulse of the customer and the pulse of the market, because you are accountable for the priority of your features, right, and the roadmap. And you cannot build the right roadmap if you don't have the right pulse on these aspects. Yeah? And this is applicable across organizations, right? So I work for Cisco, now VMware, and a startup as well. So across the board, it's the same story, right? But the question is, how can you scale? At VMware, I'm struggling with scaling, right? We have like 200,000 customers, and I cannot go and talk to each and every one of them. So I start building relationships with the leaders in the support organization, in the marketing organization, elsewhere, so I can get a representation of what they are seeing in the market. But ultimately, I do trust the information they provide me, right? Yeah.
I had a question on composing hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, hypothesis say going after feature A will give us more users, say X percentage of users. So there's two parts to it. Going after feature A will give us users. We can find that out from our consumers.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, how do you determine how much of a data we get?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So the question is building hypotheses, and in determining if you want to implement feature A versus feature B, feature A is going to get us X percentage of users or X percentage of revenue. How do you really determine what that X percentage is, correct? Yeah, I think that's a great question. There is no perfect science to it. There is no calculation to it. It really is based on the impact that feature A will have across your customer base. It's going to depend on the impact or the reach that feature will have across the customer base. Will all my customers use this feature, or will there be a certain percentage of users that will use this feature? And based on some of those detailed analysis, you can get to that answer, right? Again, there is no perfect science to it. You will have to hypothesize, and you need to backtrack and validate that. So for example, if your product has 20 features, you should look at across your user base what percentage of your users are using individual features. If it's say about 10%, then you can come to basically analysis that 10% of my user base is using feature X. So if I do feature A, I would expect about another 10% to use that feature. So something along those lines. As you need to study your current data set, you need to look at your overall customer base, use the data science team and leverage them. But ultimately, it is a number that you will have to, try around with. Yeah.
What is, so you get a sense of your customers, you mentioned through sales and support. Which one do you think is more insightful source of?
Great question. So you get customer feedback from sales and you get customer feedback from support. Which one's more valuable? I would say support for sure, because they've already bought into your vision. They already understand what the product does. They understand and resonate with the value that your product's offering, but something is not working right with it, right? With sales, it's all about selling. They think very short term. They're very transactional, right? At least most salespeople that I've talked to, right? Certain sales leaders are strategic, but every sales rep that you talk to, they're very transactional. They're focused just on that sale, right? Customers say, oh, I want this feature. Sales guy will tell you that, hey, I want this feature. But you as a product manager need to probe, why does he need that feature? What problem are we trying to solve? What problem does the customer have through which you can solve that problem, right? So basically, the summary here would be, sales guys will throw requests at you, but as a product manager, you need to synthesize and you need to look deeper into the real problem the customer is having. And sometimes it is the real problem that customers are having, but many times it's not the case, right? When you talk to the customer, they're like, oh, that's not the feature. If you can deliver this same functionality through a different mechanism, I'll be happy with it, right? So the sales guys are very quick, very to the point. They want answers. They want things to be delivered very quickly. But as a product manager, synthesize that information, Sometimes validate that with the end customer if it's a large account and there's a lot of engineering investment that you need to make towards that feature. Validate that by talking to the customer to understand the real pain point and the real problem that they're having in order to go and solve it. And then you as a product manager, you need to brainstorm all the different ways to actually deliver that solution.
And then maybe the technical support adds a layer of insight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay? Cool. So moving on, just wanted to kind of highlight what are some of the common business goals that businesses have, right? Revenue is the most important goal that business will have. Adoption and retention is what businesses care about. And then the third one is customer satisfaction that is measured through NPS, right? So these are the three key goals any business would typically have. So as a product manager, you need to align your roadmap to these goals, right? When you build your roadmap, when you build different features, how do you make sure that your features and your roadmap is aligning to these goals? So that's actually number one thing you do when you first start into product management. So I already talked a lot about this, as you'll be working with marketing, sales, and customers to get a lot of the feedback. You'll be working with marketing to make sure the messaging is accurate, so they are articulating the value proposition accurately. You will be working with the sales enablement team, right, to make sure they have all the collaterals and tools the sales team need in order to sell your product. And you will also be looking at the funnel. I think a lot of product managers these days don't look at the funnel. The funnel is the marketing funnel. How many leads you have? What is the conversion rate, right? How is it advancing through the pipeline, right? So those are some of the things as a product manager, if you start looking into, you will start advancing in your seniority from a product management perspective, right? Because now you're thinking more broadly. You're not just thinking about feature A, feature B, feature C. You're thinking a lot more strategic. A lot of this articulates back to the business goals. Because if you have a strong pipeline, your revenue numbers are going to be great. Even if you have a great product, if your pipeline sucks, right, you're not going to be able to get to the revenue numbers that you have to get to. So what do you do as a product manager? You work with marketing and sales. Why is my pipeline so weak? What can I do in the product to help accelerate the pipeline? Can I build in some features within my product that can help with demand generation, right? That can help generate interest. Learn more that something new is coming up, right? Have you tried this product that we have to offer? A lot of in-product marketing things that you can do, right, in order to solve that problem. But ultimately, you will be accountable for one of these goals, right? So you need to figure out with your management team which goal you will be measured against, what's extremely strategic for your business, and based on that, make product decisions. I'll share my personal experience. Right now at VMware, the product that I'm building, nobody cares about revenue. It's machine learning, AI, something futuristic, right? What they care about is adoption. How many customers are deploying this product of mine within their environments? That is the most important thing. So do I care about revenue? Absolutely not, right? I'm extremely focused on adoption. What can I do that will make it easy for customers to discover my product, to install my product, to configure my product, and use my product, right? That's gonna align to the goals that I have, which is adoption. Make sense? Yeah.
Definition of pipeline in your case, it's the customers, right? It's accounts.
Great question. So the definition of pipeline, I was referring to the marketing pipeline, which is customers. So it starts from leads, right? How many incoming leads you have, how many of them converted to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and then you actually end up winning, right? So that's basically how I'm looking at it. Every company has a different definition of pipeline and different stages. So you just need to find out which and what that is. Like my company used it as opportunity, analysis, evaluation, trial, and then win. So you just need to understand what pipeline your company cares about, and you need to focus on that. Because a lot of times you might have a lot of incoming leads. A lot of people come to your website, right? They fill up a form, but then none of them convert to the next stage. They may not sign up for the product, right? Or They may sign up for the email list, but then they don't convert to the next stage. They don't use the product, right? So then you have to focus on some of those things. So it really depends on the industry and space you're in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The pipeline runs, it's a product pipeline. So how many products?
Oh, no. That's not that. It's not the product pipeline. This is mainly the customer marketing pipeline to convert interested opportunities to winners. Sorry? To paying customers, exactly. Yeah. The second one would be UX and development. So this is where you'd be working with engineering, you'll be working with design team to really make sure that they understand your requirements. As a product manager, you will be writing user stories that this is what this functionality, this feature needs to actually do. As engineers, they need to understand from you exactly what that means. So you can use Jira, you can use Word doc, there's a bunch of tools out there to define the requirements, and then you prioritize them, and then engineering works on them. And design will help support a lot of that, right? So you need to work closely with design to make sure that your functionality is achieved in the most delightful way, so customers are delighted, right? So that's your goal, is working with UX very closely. And then the third one is all about executive management, right? So I kind of clubbed this to make it a little bit simpler, right? So you know how to focus your time where. But with executives, you will be working on strategy. You'll be working on competition. You'll be working on roadmap. You'll be working on forecasts, P&L planning, budget approval, staffing, business plans, so on and so forth, right? So again, when you're starting out, you probably are not doing a lot of this. Your managers and your product leads are doing a lot of this, but eventually you want to aspire to get to this level, right? So if you have a good sense on your product, if you have a good sense on your customer, it's a lot easier to do executive management.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So basically, the product manager, software product manager doesn't do any pricing and doesn't have any P&L responsibility, right?
That is true. Question was, does a software product manager have pricing and P&L responsibilities? In most cases, no, especially if it is a consumer product. And it depends from industries to industries, companies to companies, right? None of this should scare you away. Pricing, I know a lot of people get scared with that. I got scared as well myself when I first started working on pricing. It's an art, it's not a science. You need to do a lot of research, hypothesis, trial and errors to get it right. But to your question, yes, I think software product managers in most cases and most consumer-based companies are not required to. In enterprise companies though, it is different. The ones that are B2B, right? So at BlueJeans, I used to own pricing. At Vmware, not so much, right? Because it's a huge organization. There is a pricing committee and a special team. All they do is pricing, right? Because it's a very complicated product. There's a lot of different lenses and variables involved. So it really depends from company to company. But it's a good idea to know about pricing to some level so that you can crack the interviews. In some interviews, you might be asked that. You might get that question. So as you're interviewing, right, you should think about some of these things as well. It's always a good practice to do that at least. Okay? I want to spend some time on design thinking. How many of you guys have heard about this term, know what it is, have applied it day to day? Okay. All right, 2 of you. Okay, cool. Awesome. So this is really a framework that emerged out of IDEO at Stanford University. And the hypothesis or idea behind this framework was, again, getting to know your user, getting to know your customer. It starts with empathizing with them, which is through interviewing, through surveys, in having hard one-on-one conversations, right? So that you really understand what the current pain points they have, what are some of the current challenges they have. Then you kind of advance into the definition phase where you actually define that, okay, this is the problem. Let me redefine this problem in simplest, in simple words. And then let me ideate all the possible solutions that can help solve this problem, right? And this framework is meant to be very iterative. So you don't wait for 2 months just to empathize, or you don't wait for 2 months just to define. It should be a very iterative process. As you talk to customers, you define something, you quickly ideate all the possible solutions that can help meet those needs. You build a quick prototype and you test it out with those users. Right? So that process and that framework is called design thinking. It's meant to be very quick and agile. And if you apply this framework, then there's high chances that you will succeed in building products that your customers love and building products that your customer wants. Yeah.
How many customers do you work with in this process?
That's a great question. How many customers do you work with for this process, right? So in product management, and product school has an excellent section around personas, right? So as a product manager, the first thing you need to do is identify your different personas that you cater to. And personas is a group of people, group of customers or users that exhibit the same characteristic, right? So for example, I'll throw in a question for you guys. Airbnb, what are the different personas that they cater to? Any guesses or trials? Yeah.
Honeymooners.
Honeymooners, okay.
Business?
Bargain hunters.
Homeowners, okay. That's very generic, right? It's a marketplace for homeowners. So that's very generic, so you need to break it down further, right? So it's trendy folks living in the city, busy professionals, aged between 30 to 40, don't spend a whole lot of time in their house, they have an extra room, or they want to rent it out for extra income. So that could be one persona. The other persona could be a retired couple who has an extra house somewhere in Miami and they would like to put that on Airbnb and not have to worry about getting extra income or letting it stay vacant. So those are two different disjoint personas. So as Airbnb product manager, I need to make sure that things that I do in the product caters to both those personas, right? But I can come up with a product that is catered solely for busy professionals, right? I don't care about those retired couples, right? I could have done that. And then in that case, I would build all the features catered to those busy professionals. What do they like? How do they interface with technology? They are on mobile all the time, so I really need to make sure I have an awesome mobile app. Maybe I don't even do a web app, right? Because my persona is so different than the retired couple. For the retired couples, I might not even care about a mobile app because a lot of them might not even have that many smartphones, right? So that's the way you should think about it, right? So you should basically build personas as your first step and then identify a few customers that is part of that group and then talk to those customers, right? Again, you're not going to be able to cover each and every customer of yours, but you will get into a good sample size. And then you can keep changing that sample size to validate your hypothesis. Okay, questions? Cool, so this is really design thinking framework. So you empathize, you define, you quickly ideate all the possible solutions, have a lot of post-it notes, throw it up on the wall, get together in a room, right? So there are a lot of different exercises that you can do to actually apply this in your day-to-day role. You quickly build prototypes using wireframes, right? Or just something on the napkin or on a piece of paper. Show it to a customer, hey, does this work for you? If yes, great. Try it out with a few other users, few other customers. There are a lot of tools out there as well, like Usability Hub, etc., through which you can get user feedback, right, on some of the designs. So if you are conflicted between design A and design B, you can post it on Usability Hub and you can actually get a good view and you can target the right customers or users that you want to target based on demographics, regions, so on and so forth. So we cover a lot of that in the course as well. And then you test it out, right? You basically make sure it works, it doesn't work. If it doesn't, why not? And it's basically a constant iterative process. I think the next thing I want to share is just a quick example of something that happened at BlueJeans and how we apply design thinking. Just thought it would be an interesting story to share. One of the challenges that we had with our product, the one that I used to manage about 3 years ago, is our customer satisfaction score was extremely poor. Customers were unhappy, the NPS score was at -10, and we just weren't able to figure out why that's the case. We knew UX was a challenge. What's that? Oh, NPS is Net Promoter Score. That's a metric used these days to measure customer satisfaction. Basically CSAT, right? So you can have a scale of 1 to 5, right, where you can rate a particular product. But Net Promoter Score is now the industry standard. A lot of SaaS companies and Gen X companies are using it. And it asks the question, how likely are you to recommend this product or service to a friend or a colleague? And usually, right, you will be pretty confident about your rating because your credibility is at stake. It's about recommending something that you like to others. So if others don't like what you recommend, you will basically, your impression will not be that great, right? So generally, that's the reason NPS has become one of the standards out here, in Silicon Valley at least. And it's a pretty strict score, right? It's from 1 to 10. And out of that, only 9 and 10 are considered as promoters. 1 to 6 is detractors, so negative. And 7 and 8 is neutral. And the way you calculate the score is you basically take a percentage of promoters, you remove all the detractors out of it, and you divide by the total score. So I'll let you guys do the math, or after this we can talk about it. But because promoters is only 8, 9 or 10, and detractors is from 1 to 7, it's very hard to achieve a high NPS score. Okay? So anyways, NPS was -10 for the product. We knew UX was a challenge, but we didn't know what about the UX was a challenge. So we were really conflicted. So what I did as a product manager was I basically said, okay, you know what, this is getting frustrated. Let me actually understand how my customers are using my product. To give you some context, at BlueJeans, this product was a webinar product. So it basically was used by executives and by senior leadership to run all hands town halls, webinars, where they invite a large set of users to the event and they stream that online, right? So think of it as Netflix, or think of it as Facebook Live, right? But for the business users, right? That's what the product was all about. And you had a moderator who's organizing the event, who's responding to chat, who's responding to Q&A, polling, so on and so forth. And you had the attendees and the presenters who were participating in the event. So the moderator NPS was very low, right? People were not happy about it. So I flew around the country to shadow these events. I had interviews with them, right? I spoke to them over video, I spoke with them over phone, but I never got the sense of what is the problem. So I actually attended these real events to see how they were conducting these events at scale, right? Because these are leadership folks, there's a lot of people involved, it has to go absolutely fine. And what I realized is for my product to, for them to use my product, they had to use 3 laptops. And that was the aha moment for me, is they were not able to multitask across different functions because my product, the UX was complicated. Okay, and I'll show you what that UX looked like. But there were 3 laptops stacked one next to the other so that they can run the event bulletproof. And because the stakes are high, it's an executive up there, thousands and thousands of people watching the event has to run flawlessly. And this is the reason where a lot of the moderators were not having a very delightful experience. So that was the aha moment for me.
Question, how is it that you didn't know that they needed to run 3? Because did they just in the field, they said, wow, this doesn't work, I need a second, I need a third?
Yeah. So I started probing, right? I saw that they had 3 laptops and I was surprised. So I asked them, why do you need 3 laptops? And what they told me is I need to multitask because I'm the moderator. I need to make sure that all these different things are happening at the same time.
So
Time is of the essence.
I can see you need a moderator computer,
Yep.
and then he wants to see
The presenter interface, because he had a bunch of presenters remotely, executives remotely coming in, and then the attendees view, right, the ones who are watching. So we had 3 different roles, and that's why he needed 3 different laptops to actually make sure the event was flawless, right? And he had to do multiple things, which I think my next slide covers. No, it doesn't. So anyway, so he had to do multiple things in order to make sure the event was successful, and so he had 3 different laptops out, basically out there. So we basically started brainstorming. We looked at all the different interviews. We decided, okay, what is a successful event? What is an ideal event? What do customers care about? What do these moderators care about? Right? What are some of the gaps that we have between our ideal design and the current design that we have? And then we started ideating and started coming up with things that we could have fixed, right? And have fun along the way as well. And after this exercise, so this is what the old interface looked like, right? If you see, there is this is the video, so think of this as the live video of an executive presenting. And these are all the different functions. And this is the presenter up here. This is chat, Q&A, screen share, so on and so forth, right? But this was taking up majority of the screen. And that was the problem. We did not realize this sitting behind the desk. We only realized this when we started actually shadowing the folks out there in the field. So we changed this and we came up with this design. So this was the new Moderator Dashboard, which reduced the size of video, because as the organizer, I don't give a damn about the presenter or the presentation, right? I am focused on making sure the event is flawless. I want to make sure the audio quality is great, the video quality is great, everyone in the audience is happy. If there are questions in the audience, I'm able to answer those, so on and so forth. So we really changed the interface. We made this all bold, be able to multitask. You can pop these widgets out, so you can now throw them all over your screen. A lot of them had big monitors, so you can actually have chat in one corner, Q&A in the other corner, so on and so forth. And this resulted in our NPS score to be over 50. So when I left BlueJeans, at least, the score was at about plus 55 for the moderator. So that was a big shift, right? Again, there were a lot of changes that we made over time that got us there, but it's just an example. This dashboard, like a simple UX change, right, could have resulted, and the magnitude was just amazing, right, of the return that we got in that investment. So in summary, I think just want to cover key things about product management in general. It's all about creating customer value, right? How can you solve a customer problem? By identifying an unsolved customer problem with a measurable business benefit, right? Is it revenue? Is it customer satisfaction? Is it adoption? Is it reducing churn? So something that's measurable to create delightful end user experience, right? So your goal is not only to get business benefit, but ultimately you want to create a delightful user experience that outwits the competition, right? So this is what a successful product manager would do over a period of sustainable time, right? So in general, create something that creates value, that can solve an unidentified problem that customers have with business benefits to create an end user delightful experience over a sustainable period of time. So again, this is something I learned, created on my own. Feedback is welcome. And again, Product School is an excellent resource for you guys to get into product management if you guys want to get there. It teaches a lot of the fundamentals of product management. And I think the great thing about it is that they invite people from the industry, so they can provide a lot of their personal personal background and stories and so on and so forth and experience to teach product management to those students. Yeah. With that said, I will turn it over to Brendan. Any questions? I'm going to be around here anyways, but are there any other questions? Anything that you would like to add, being a product manager already? Cool. Thank you guys. I'll be right here, so if there are any questions, feel free to reach out, and you guys can also add me on LinkedIn. Just happy to stay connected.